Hello, everybody. Welcome to GC 365. I'm Pastor Haylee.
And I'm Jenni.
I'm the high school pastor here at the Mill Creek campus. And Jenni, what do you do?
I volunteer with the youth here.
Yes. She's so good. Middle school and high school. She does a little bit of both. She is truly greater than I in that aspect. So I love having her. Today, I asked her to be talking about day 47 with me. So if you're watching, you're probably on day 47, or if you're just kind of catching up, we have some good stuff for you today.
We do.
Yeah. I actually, I did day 42, or not day 42, day 2. And I was talking about how we need to celebrate every day, start it on early, create the habit, because we're going to get into books like Leviticus. And I feel like it was a little bit of a foreshadowing moment because we are literally starting the book of Leviticus today.
Chapters 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's a doozy, but we're going to get through it. So what were some things that maybe stood out to you as just weird, or some questions you have? Yeah, what stood out to you in those chapters?
It was just so specific, like everything that you had to do, and you had to get like the perfect animal, and there were so many different kinds of animals, and just everything that you had to do.
Yeah, there was so much that you had to remember. I feel like just reading those passages, I was like falling behind. I'm like, wait, okay, I need to go back. Not that I even need to remember these things specifically,
Right.
but like they need to have written it down somewhere.
Agreed.
And they needed to have a lot of land to have all of these animals,
Yes.
maybe. The thing that was super weird to me, which I know this was just part of the sacrifice process, was that they would splatter the blood of the animals on the outside of the entrance. Like,
so gross.
it just is. And so there's burnt and peace and grain offerings and all these things. So like you said,
Yes.
a lot and so many different things. So I did a little bit of research, because typically when I read these passages, specifically Leviticus, I tune it out and I just like keep scrolling, and I kind of just forget about what's going on. And I know that offerings happen here, but I haven't ever taken the time to know the importance of them. And so I looked it up, and although it's very repulsive to us, we don't do this now, by the way.
So thankful.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Because that'd be a mess and just a lot of extra time that we don't have.
Exactly.
But it is repulsive to us. However, back then it was a tradition, and not just Christian religion, but in a lot of other religions. And so they knew that this was a common thing. And so it wasn't weird for them. They just knew this was a part of their practices, in a way to stay in touch with God and to keep that front of mind. So making sure that there was always a constant to remind them that sin can be very dangerous in their life, and to sensitize them to, hey, as long as you keep doing these practices, then you'll remember that your relationship with God should take priority. So that stuck out to me, because I was like, okay, it makes a little bit of more sense now.
Right.
Yeah. So
It makes a lot more sense.
So we'll let them get away with it. It doesn't make it any less weird or harder to read, but now a little bit of information there. So one question I wanted to ask you, knowing that these were the ways that people actively restored their relationship with God, how can we, or how do you actively restore your relationship with God on a daily basis?
Yeah. I do the 1-year Bible with Gold Creek as well. And I think that definitely does help my relationship with God, as I'm constantly growing in Him. And with these, just kind of learning different thoughts other people have and different ideas they have about what they're reading.
Yeah.
All of that really does help, and having community.
Totally. Yeah, I think community is the biggest thing for me specifically, and just being able to grow in my relationship, and like you said, like seeing other people's comments, or days like today where it's like, okay, how can I get a little bit more interested in the reading and apply it to my life? Because trust me, I don't think anybody now was like, how can I apply the sacrifice of a pigeon to my life now? Maybe you can, but that's all on you. All right.
Yes.
So that is all in Leviticus. It's a lot, but hopefully you guys got something from it as well. If you did, leave a comment, let us know, because it just helps. Anything we can take away from it. One other thing I did want to mention in there that we kind of talked about is how there had to be no yeast and to add salt. And so there was no yeast because that's a bacterial fungus. So it symbolized sin. Fun fact. Yeah. And they had to add salt because it would symbolize God's activity in our life and just penetrating or preserving our lives and our relationships with him. So kind of fun.
Super interesting.
Well, let's move on to even greater stories in the New Testament. We had a lot.
Yes.
And so were there any scripture? We're in Mark chapter 1 and 2. Was there anything that stuck out to you in those stories?
I thought it was really interesting. There was definitely a story about a man who was had leprosy. And when Jesus healed him, he was then told not to tell anybody, but then he did. And obviously Jesus knows everything. He knew the guy would go tell everyone. But still, Jesus told the man not to go tell. And I just think that's interesting. I wonder why Jesus did that.
Yeah, I've always wondered that myself, because the man was spreading good news.
Right.
So it wasn't bad. Yeah. However, it's just, it is weird that he's like, hey, keep this on the down low.
Right.
And he had been healing people.
Yeah.
So already. So
exactly.
You'd think the word probably got out a little bit before that, but
exactly.
Maybe this man was like what we call an influencer these days.
Maybe.
He had a lot of followers himself.
Yes.
You never know.
Maybe.
That's my like youth pastor side talking. I have to know the terms and lingos that they use. I saw in Mark 1 verses 31, and he's talking about Simon and Simon's mother-in-law, and who was very sick. And it says, so he went to her bedside, talking about Jesus, took her by the hand, helped her sit up. Then the fever left her, and she prepared a meal for them. Like, that is such a mom thing to do.
Such a mom thing.
Yeah. And so it made me think about what my mom would do in that situation. And she totally would. Like, she would probably get up and start cleaning the house.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. What about your mom?
My mom would make a big meal. You know, I mean, my grandma was raised in the Deep South.
Oh.
Raised her kids.
So you're going to get good food.
You cook a meal, yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And, like, do you think that those guys just let her do it? And, like, they're just
kind of sounds like
okay,
it.
Great. Yeah, we don't ever hear, like, they didn't stop her by any means. So she was, like, completely healed, which I think is incredible.
Yes.
All right, so that part goes on in verses 34. It's talking about how Jesus has been healing the demon-possessed people. And in verse 34, it says, so Jesus healed many people who were sick with various diseases, and he cast out many demons. But because the demons knew who he was, he did not allow them to speak. And so, again, he's kind of holding in all these secrets. Now, demons are a lot different than a man that's just been healed.
Yes.
But after, again, looking into it a little bit more, the reasons why Jesus didn't allow them to speak was, one, because he wanted for people to know who he was on his timetable, not on Satan's. And I thought that was really cool because I've never thought about it like that. And he also wanted people to believe on their own, which I think we talk about a lot, as that's part of our faith. And the greatest part of our relationship with God is that we get to choose. It's not a forced thing. And so I think that's pretty cool that he was like, no, these people, they can decide on their own.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I always think it's really interesting that the demons also listen to God.
Yeah.
To Jesus.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I always think that's just really interesting that even the demons obey him.
Yeah, that they knew his authority.
Yeah.
And it proves that his authority is greater than Satan. So that is really cool.
Yeah.
All right, so the next one, we're going to stay in Mark verses 35. We're just going to keep going. And this verse, I don't know why, but I mean, maybe for good reason, a good reminder in my life. God's been speaking to me. This verse keeps popping up in just different messages or different readings that I'm going through. And it says, before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. And the question that comes with this is that if Jesus himself, who is the Son of God, needed time with God, how much more do we need it? And like, we always we know that we need to spend time with God, but Jesus was truly an example and saying like, hey, even I, who can do no wrong, I need to go and be with God and just restore myself. So when is the best time for you to get away with God?
I think for me, I really, there's something about the water. So I always go to the beach.
Yeah.
And I just sit in my car and I'll just journal or pray or listen to worship music. And to me, that's like my spot. That's like where I can really hear God.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I like that. And it's so peaceful.
Exactly.
So, and it just looking out at God's creation, I think it's so wonderful. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
For me, it's always on my way to and from work and just blasting that worship music. You know, it's the only time that I'm by myself that I could really just blast out my voice. I'm not on the worship team for a reason. So God can it can be a joyful sound to him. Or just praying out loud, just saying like, hey, God, this is my day, or this is what I'm going through. And so that has usually been the best time for me. And I always think it's so crazy because Jesus was so busy.
Yeah.
Like we read all these stories that he's healing these people. He's also having to lead his disciples who weren't following him before, weren't leading the greatest lifestyle before. And he's still, whether it's like in the middle of the night or as we've read before, on a storm in the middle of a boat or on a boat in the middle of a storm, said that a little bit backwards. He's always with God and resting in him. So,
and even with like all the crowds that are always surrounding him and always following him, he still made it a priority to go alone somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. So I encourage you guys that if you don't have a time that you have set aside or a place that you have set aside to just be your place with God, your sanctuary with him, your place of worship with him, that's not just here at the church, that you would do that would be the next habit that you create aside from reading the 1 Year Bible, because it does help so much. And it just brings so much peace to know, okay, I've had my time with God and he knows and he hears me.
Yes.
All right. We're going to get into our last bit here. We are going to go right into Proverbs. This is, again,
it's great.
It's a doozy of a day, a little bit. And we are in Proverbs 9, verses 13 through 18. And it starts off with the woman named Folly is brash. Now, this is not a real woman named Folly.
No,
we had to look it up. And in case your kids are around, we'll let you look it up. Or, we'll just say folly means whore. Yeah, that's what it means.
That's what we get to talk about today.
Yeah. All the sacrifices and the follies. So it is, so again, not actually a real woman. It's using it as just a metaphor and saying how dangerous that can be, sin can be in our life, and how deceiving it can be. Because what were some things that you took away that kind of made you realize this as well, that sin is deceiving?
Just the fact, like, folly is very, has two different lives. A lot like sin. Like, we try and hide it, and then we have, we put on another face, happy face, So we have that sinful life, and then we have, our normal life.
Yeah. And in this case, it was used as a house, and that this woman was on this house saying, come in, everything's greater when you keep it in secret, when it's stolen, but eaten in secret. And so from the outside, it looks incredible and like this secret party that you would want to be a part of.
Right.
However, it's not truly the case.
No.
Because it referred to as everybody inside as dead. So.
And a graveyard.
Yeah. And so you might be wondering how all of these things can come back to Leviticus, or relate to folly.
Right.
But what I got out of this is that all the practices that were done in Leviticus remind us that we need to be in a constant place of restoring our soul with God and restoring our relationship with him. Because if not, we get in situations where we come across the woman named Folly, we come across sin and deception. And when we fall into that, we forget how we can come back out of it. And so we should be in this constant place of going to the beach, worshiping loudly in the car, or just simply being in prayer.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. I know we went through a lot today, but I just ask and encourage you that you would continue to keep going and let us know what you guys thought about today as well. So we'll see you on Sunday.